It's valuable information. So we're going to look forward to our presentation from Ms. Princess Good. Welcome her.
I know I was going first. But it's okay. It doesn't matter. Okay. No. So as Nelly said, my name is Princess Good, and I stand before you as a representative of Urban Grief, which in short is an organization that my mother-in-law created. God gave her the vision. She ran with it over 10 years ago. And what we do is respond to traumatic events. So when we have families that, the things that happen to, you can pretty much name anything, have a great loss due to violence, or, we respond to those things. We provide resources or lead them to somewhere else that may be able to help them along the journey of grief and trauma. So originally, my mom would have been here with you, but she's out of town, and she suggested that I take her place today. So I'm very grateful, just that she thinks I'm capable. And I'm very grateful to Julia for trusting her with that and saying okay, because she could have been like, well, I don't really know her like that, so I don't want her speaking at my event. So, Ms. Julia, thank you very, very much. I'm going to be very quick, at least I plan to be. As Nelly mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about trauma, a little bit about ACEs, not too deep, because we do have some professionals in the room that can give you more information, at a later time. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of my experience and what my life looked like as a response to childhood trauma when I was a kid. And by the way, if you're wondering, I'm not ashamed of my age. I'm 28 years old. Wow. I will be 29 in December. And because, most women are, it's rude to ask their age. And I'm like, girl, I'm 28. And I look awesome. So, I'm just going to start with some basic definitions. I don't have PowerPoints and all that stuff because I don't want you looking at what I'm looking at. I want to see it and I want to present it to you. And it's very difficult to read like this and talk. So, if you have a pen, you can take notes. I'll try to speak slowly and clearly so that you can hear what I'm saying. Okay, so trauma. A deeply distressing or disturbing experience, an experience that produces psychological injury or pain. And so in some research that some products that my mom gave me, I see the trauma equation. So events plus experience plus effects equals trauma. And the events are described as events or circumstances may include the actual or extreme threat of physical or psychological harm or the severe withholding of resources for healthy development. Events may occur once or repeatedly over time. Experience is an event that may be experienced as traumatic by one individual and not another. So when I share some of my personal story, you will see that there are some things that, if you went through that, you may not have been affected by it as much as I was, or you may have been affected 10 times worse. The experience may be influenced by cultural beliefs and the developmental stage of the individual. Effects. Adverse effects may occur immediately or over time, may include physical, mental, emotional, cognitive, behavioral, social, and spiritual challenges. And individuals may not recognize the connection between effects and events. So, moving on to ACEs, which Nelly already said is adverse childhood experiences. It started as a study, I forget the year, but the thing is that forever, pretty much, people have always gone through things as young people, and growing up, they may have been misdiagnosed with certain behavioral issues or disorders that really don't fit. And so what that study did was point out that these adverse childhood experiences that people are experiencing in childhood actually explain a lot of things that manifest later in life through childhood, teenage years, and sometimes even adulthood. It's due to that. It's not always ADHD or, these things that they say that we have. That's not always the case. And so the ACEs study pretty much put it out there that there's more to be looked into. There's more to know about a person. And now the hope is that when you go for your physical or your doctor screening yearly, I hope, they'll start screening for these things. They'll ask you those questions that pertain to really see what's going on, because your body responds to those things. And then they say, oh, you have this and you have that. And you're like, but this doesn't even make sense. So an average childhood experience is a single or multiple traumatic exposures and or events experienced during childhood. Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, you should look her up. Google her, look into her work. It's amazing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris describes childhood trauma as threats that are so severe and pervasive that they literally get under our skin and change our physiology.
Burke-Harris. So I think it's different.
Dr. Nadine, Nadine, Burke, B as in boy, U-R-K-E, and Harris. She's all over. She's on YouTube, she's on Google, she may be on social media. I haven't looked that far, but the information she has is absolutely amazing. She's a doctor and pediatrician in California. Amazing, amazing. So some of the examples of ACEs are physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, physical and emotional neglect, mentally ill, depressed, or suicidal person in the home, a substance-dependent family member, domestic violence in the home, loss of a parent by death, abandonment, separation, or divorce, and incarceration of a family member. ACEs affects brain development, structure, and function, a developing immune system, developing hormonal system, and this is like so unreal to me, the way that your DNA is read and transcribed is affected by adverse childhood experiences. ACEs also increases the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. It triples the risk of heart disease and lung cancer, creates a 20-year difference in life expectancy. So I'm 28. Let's say Black female life expectancy right now is 80, just for an example. And say that I allow my ACEs to define who I am and control my life forever, it would be most likely I would die at 60. Just because of what I've experienced as a child. Like, that is crazy. That's really crazy. And the manifestation of the effects of ACEs are often misdiagnosed as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So in the original study of ACEs, they surveyed 17,500 adults. 70% of them were Caucasian and 70% were college educated, and that is very important to know. That majority of them were Caucasian and college educated. But they questioned them about their exposure history to adverse childhood experiences, and for every yes answer, they got 1 point on the score. So if you take the ACEs test, or quiz, or whatever you want to call it, I took it just on Thursday, and my ACE score is 7. So there's 10 questions, and so that means that out of the 10 questions, I answered yes to 7 of them, which are asking about my experiences as a child. So the higher your score, the more likely those things are to manifest that I already mentioned. So just for example, a few of the questions are on the ACE questionnaire is, excuse me for 1 second. Did a parent or other adult in your household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Another question is, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or used street drugs? So those are just examples of the questions that are asked, and if you answer yes, you get a point. So you don't really want to pass this test. You don't want to pass it. But it's real, and most people, like I would say, at least 80% of the people in this room will have an ACE score of at least 5. You agree? Okay. Where am I? 67% have an ACE score of at least 1, and 12.6% have 4 or more. Those with an ACE score of 4 or more are 4 times more likely to be depressed, which I was, and 12 times more likely to be suicidal compared to those with an ACE score of 0. If you have an ACE score of 0, God bless your whole life. Your whole life.
You're lying.
Let's see where then there's also, as Nelly also found out on Thursday, because we were at the same event, and she walked up to me and she's like, "You're Princess, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, why do you know who I am? Because depending on when I meet people, depending on where they say they know me from, can be good or bad for me. So you say you met me when I was like 16. I'm not that person anymore. I'm not. Just erase everything you ever knew. So there's also a resiliency score, and that one has 14 questions, and out of that one, my score was 11 out of 14. So although my ACE score is 7, and I went through all these things, my resiliency score proves that, as we mentioned, I think at least twice already, you're not defined by your childhood experiences. That is not, like, what you went through is not who you are. So please, if you don't know that, if you're not comfortable knowing that, you need to know that today. That's not who you are. It's just what you experienced. That's it. That's all it was. It was an experience. Woo! I'm doing more than I expected myself to be doing.
That's all right.
And when you look back at your life and you just see, like, wow, it's really possible to come out of that.
Amen.
It's very possible. And it doesn't have to be when you're 60, 70 years old. That's right. Thank God. That's right.
But if you come out at 67, it's okay.
Right.
Yes. Whatever time
as long as you come out.
Whatever time you need to be healed and made whole, that's what we want for you.
Right.
We want you to be a whole individual. And we want you to know who you are and that you are. Okay, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me get back to this. So I'm just going to share some of my personal experiences. If I cry, just cry with me. Because even as I was taking notes on my experiences so I make sure I didn't miss certain things. Because so many things happen that you can tell your story like, wow, I didn't share that part and that part and that part. But all these things went into that ACE score that I have of 7. So most of my childhood, my mother was addicted to a drug, and she was also an alcoholic. My parents were divorced when I was about 4, I want to say, maybe 3. And I was not even aware that they were ever married until I got a little older and I realized that we all had the same last name. And I was like, what is going on here? And so that's when I began to ask questions, and I found out that they were divorced and why. And that's not really relevant for right now, but they were divorced. My dad was always present in my life. I love him very dearly. But my dad was also an alcoholic. And so there would be times where, as close as we are, he would get belligerent and be verbally abusive without even knowing it, nor caring. And I said, Dad, why are you talking to me like that? What is wrong? I do it, you know. And so my mom was the same way. And then my mom had this boyfriend. My mom has 3 children. Only 2 of us grew up in the house together, my sister and I, my younger sister and I. And my mom had this boyfriend who was also addicted to the drug and an alcoholic. So all that in one house. And when he first came into our life, I was a little attached to him. You know, I was a kid. So if you have someone being nice to you, you get attached. And then he went to jail, and I used to write him. He used to send me pictures. And then he came home, and he was very, very abusive to my mom. Verbally, physically, and because of those 2, definitely emotionally and mentally. I was about between the ages of 7 to 9, as I remember it at that particular time. And my sister and I shared a room at the time. So my sister used to frustrate my mom because she didn't want to go to bed. And my mom wanted to go do her stuff. So she would beat my sister to make her go to bed. And then she would go in her bed and get beat herself. And I would hear it because even now I can fall asleep very easily. And I can sleep through almost anything. But if something is not ordinary, so if someone comes to my house at night, I'm going to hear it. But if you're at my house with me and you're watching TV, I won't hear that. So I would listen in the next room over to my mom. And my mom is about my size. I'm not exaggerating. And so any man handling us obviously has the dominant power, right? So he used to beat her so bad. It was just like, boom, bam, and you would hear her trying to defend herself with lamps and pots and pans. And so I used to be so scared, like, is he going to kill my mother? And at the time, I was growing a hatred for my mom because of the things she was doing, and I knew it wasn't right, even as a kid. And so I would go in there. Like, I would get out of my bed, scared to death, and and I would walk in my mom's room, and I would just stand right at the doorway like this. Like, are you gonna come out? And literally, he would look at me and stop. Like, it was like, well, what were you doing it for? You could stop. But literally, when he would see me standing there, he would stop. It would all cease. And then I would just kindly turn around and go back in my room. And at that time, I did not have a prayer life. I was not in church or anything. I would just go back in my room, like, hoping that when I wake up in the morning, my mom will still be alive. Because although I couldn't really stand her, I'm a kid and she's my mom. Like, she's my primary caregiver, so I want her to live. And so, yeah, that was a lot. So, my mom, she's doing much better today. But growing up, so that's what my household was like. And then my mom always had these friends that had to live with us. It was like the whole house with dysfunction. Like, how are you offering stuff to people? We don't even have it here. It was always someone sleeping on our couches, my cousins, my mom's friends. And then she would argue with them. And she was like, every time you come in my house, you're taking from us. I said, well, you let them in. I told you to stay here. I mean, I was a kid thinking like this. I'm like, my mom is crazy. You know, but the good thing is, I had my grandmother. And she passed away. So I get emotional when I talk about her. I'm named after her. Her name was Princess. And she was my support. She was an English teacher in an urban school in Albany at Livingston. Before I was born, I think she retired because I was born. She had to help take care of me. So because she was an educator, she educated me. She made sure I could read, write, spell, talk, all of those things. She made sure I knew that I was loved and that if I needed anything, I had someone to do that. You know, and my aunt was also the same way. Hallelujah. Sister. So anything I needed, school supplies, everything, they were there for that. And that was really a buffer in my life. Like, things could have been way worse if I didn't have my grandmother. I don't even know where I would have been. And so my grandmother's house was always like home to me, always. I'm at home, I'm safe, I have peace. I don't have to worry about any crazy men or drug addicts coming in doing anything. Not at grandma's house. Not at all. Or I would always go to my friend's house because their moms weren't like my mom, and I felt like they loved me as their own kid, so I would just never want to be home. And my little sister used to be with her dad a lot, so I was okay with her. Like, she's good. So that my grandmother's house, like my grandmother and her house and everything about her provided that buffer for me that I needed. So going into my teenage years, around 13, before my teenage years, I did start going to church with my father's parents. I did get involved, and that became a buffer. But then when I was exposed to certain things at school, I was like, well, I'd rather have this. I wasn't saved or anything. I just was going and very active. I went to Sunday school. I participated in service. But then I got like straight away because this was what I knew. This is what my house looks like. So maybe I fit in with this, whatever that was, like the streets and friends that I really don't need to be with, bad influences. So that's what I pretty much started to do. So throughout my teenage years, I stopped going to church. I totally wiped away any belief in God. I was like, I do not believe in God because my life is horrible. He does not exist. Period. Don't talk to me about him. I avoided my dad's mom as much as I could because she is, like, if I look at my book girl, you would think I'm a book girl right now. Like, she is, sometimes I don't want to talk to her because all she wants to talk about is Jesus. And I don't want to talk about Jesus because he's not real. And so I became very angry as a teenager because my mother was on drugs. She would not live up to her potential, which I knew she had because she wasn't always that way. And I was just angry. Like, it was just unreal. Like, me thinking back, I'm like, what were you? I wasn't thinking. What were you doing? I don't know. Like, I became very angry. I was depressed. I had no self-esteem, no self-value, none of that. I lost my virginity at 14 years old in my mother's house. While she was there, most likely. Because there was no structure. There were no rules. It was like everyone's just doing what they want. And I fell right into that. And I was very bad in school. I was getting suspended and expelled. But my grades were always good because my grandmother. You know, I knew how to do the work. I just was disrespectful. I wouldn't even say half the things I said in one sentence today. I would never. So, like my grandmother, anything that my grandmother had to do with would make me excel. So if you call my parents to come to school because I was bad, I don't care. Because I don't respect them anyway. But you call my grandmother, you will see a transformation. Grandma, they did it. And she knew that I did it. But the thing about my grandmother is she would say, I know it's bad. When we would leave the school, she would say, I know it's bad. I know it's hard. But you're going to come through. You're going to graduate this school and that school and all these schools. You're going to do it. I'm like, Grandma, how? You're going to do it. If I didn't have that, then all I would have is that negative stuff that was being imparted into me. So my grandmother literally, and she knew what she was doing. I mean, I was a kid, so I didn't. I was a teenage alcoholic at about 16, 17. Guess who used to buy my drinks? My mom. Because my mom had this philosophy where it was like, well, if you're going to do it, I would rather you do it where I know you're doing it. This is weird stuff. I'm like, Mom, I'm still doing it. Like, she would literally go to the liquor store for me because she knew if she didn't go, I was going to get somebody to go. And I don't, whatever. It still doesn't make sense, but my mom used to get my drinks for me. My friends used to come over. My friends used to smoke weed with my mom. I'm just like, this is my mother. What are you doing? They're like, your mom's so cool. I'm like, yeah, okay. Mother's not supposed to do that. And so, witnessing that domestic abuse, getting to the topic of saying domestic violence, witnessing that domestic abuse in my home as a kid, when I was about 14, I had this boyfriend, and I was angry. And so, we got into a domestic violent relationship. 14 years old. Guess who was the aggressor? Me. And I mean, it was bad. Like, I used to try to run him over with my car when I got one. I used to hit him, throw bricks out on PlayStation, like, you name it, and it was on. Because I didn't have the self-esteem, and he's a teenage boy, so he is acting on his hormones, and you know what men do, they cheat and all this. But I was angry, and I didn't love myself, so I felt like this was my only way out. Like, you're going to be with me, even if I have to fight every girl in the school, crazy stuff. But yeah, I was the aggressor, and it was bad. Like, our mothers had to break us up from fights. It was a mess. And then later, he went to jail, and that was over. Not right away, but eventually it was over. I'm just talking fast for sake of time. And then I got this other guy whom I don't even know how we ended up in a relationship. Like, I never thought we were in a relationship. He moved himself into my apartment. It was my first apartment. He moved himself in. He stole my key, made a copy. Like, this was, I did not want any of that. And then he became very abusive toward me. So now I've experienced being an aggressor in a domestic violence relationship, and I've experienced being a victim. And both sides are crazy. So, like, when I hear about stories like this, I don't point my finger like, oh, you shouldn't, or oh, because I understand both sides. And now that I have this understanding of ACEs, I also understand that there's probably so much in this person that is unpacked and untouched that that's what they're acting on. So as the victim, this guy was like 260 pounds at least. He was very tall and really muscular. And like, I remember one day I tried to stab him in defense, and he literally grabbed a knife on my hand and I'm gonna die. I mean, he used to throw me into walls. I'm like, what? And it would be like over nothing. And I was really scared. Now, most people that are victims in a domestic violence relationship are stuck. Especially if they're married, they're stuck. They won't leave, and some of them feel like they can't leave. It's not that they can't, but they feel like they can't because maybe their abuser is their finances, financial stability, or they own the house, or I want to provide a 2-parent home for my kids. But let me tell you something, that is not the way. That is not the way. And so I actually was not that one that was stuck. I wanted out. I was a little scared and a little ashamed to try to reach out for help because at that time, I felt like I was very promiscuous. Not like sleeping with a new person every day or anything like that. But it was like I would have someone for a little while, I'm done with them, and I would move on immediately. And so it was like that. But it wasn't like all together at once. But as I felt promiscuous, and I was ashamed to even tell someone that I was dealing with this person to get help. And the only person I knew was my god sister who moved to New York City. I said, I need you to come here, stay with me, and get him out of my house before he kills me. And then if you tell certain people, they want to kill him. And I didn't want anybody to kill him. I don't want it out of my hands. I don't want you to kill him. But I do want him out of my house and out of my life with all of his belongings. period. He used to steal my car at night. It was a lot. So my sister did come and she did get him out, and he did come back when she went. It was just a mess. I can't even remember how I got out, but I know it wasn't by way of death. Thank God. Yeah. So I have experienced that aggressor and victim thing as a result of my ACEs. Yeah. So moving on, how did I overcome all of that? Number one, well, I can't say number one. I'm not gonna put them in order of importance. It's just the order I'm speaking in. But number one was that support from my grandmother, that encouragement from my grandmother, the you can mentality from my grandmother and my aunt. That fostered the resiliency in me. Literally, it built it up. And then because of my actions as a teenager, I was also on probation, or actually I was on PINS, which is teenage probation, parents in need of support, because I was out of control. My parents could do nothing about it. I had mandated counseling through like 2 different agencies, which I didn't understand. One did family counseling, and one was individual. And the family counselor was a Black woman. She was amazing. But I was like, why do you keep coming here every week? You're not helping. She used to come to our house. I said, you're not helping. You see this house? It's filthy, and everyone's everywhere. And she's like, listen, your family doesn't have to remain like this. I'm like, yes, they do. So I went through those. I had counseling. And at that time, I did not feel like the counseling was working. But now that I look back, it did work. Like, it did. I just didn't think at that time. And then I just got to that point where it was like, I can't do this. I cannot live like this. I can't live angry. I can't live almost risking my freedom every other weekend because I'm drunk and this person just made me mad. So now I want to fight them and beat them with whatever I can find. I can't live like that. I spent one night in the precinct downtown Albany, one night, because I had my boyfriend with a car. And when I sat in there, I was just like, half of me was like that tough side, like I could do this, I could go to jail, whatever. But then like the inner me was like, girl, this is not for you. Like my grandmother had no idea that any of this even occurred. She didn't know I was running people over with my car. She didn't know I was beating people. She didn't know I was in all these domestic. I'm sure she knew I had boyfriends because I was young and she was young before. But she didn't know the details because I would not let her know. I was perfect around her. I'm like, I'm your little princess, remember? And all my life she would say, you know, you are a princess. You have to look up to your name. And I'm like, yeah, whatever that means, grandma, sure. And I would leave and do all types of crazy stuff. And so right after my high school graduation, my mom just up one day and was like, I'm going to rehab. So she just moved herself to New York City and just left us here to, you figure it out. So naturally, I went with my grandmother, my sister went with her father. My godmother was living with us at the time because somebody was always living with us. He was on his way to jail, so he didn't even care. He just stayed in an apartment for 2 weeks until he had to turn himself in. So my mom went to rehab, I stayed with my grandmother, and even living with my grandmother, I still left her house and did all that crazy stuff and went home like, hi grandma. How was your day? You know, and so I stayed that night in jail, if you will. And I was like, what's gonna happen if you go to jail and your grandmother finds out that you're sitting in jail? And then she has to find out what got you there, and then everything else has to come to the table. Cause she'll be like, why did you want someone over with your family? What led to that? Oh, you've been doing this often, and it was so embarrassing. And so by the grace, I promise you, by the grace of God, went to court the next day. I think my dad was there. They had my car in the pound. But because I was taking college classes at Hudson Valley, which I was failing, but I was taking the classes, and I was working at Walmart. And I had never done anything. I had nothing else on my record because all that stuff, probation, teenage probation, that was sealed because I was no longer a minor. So they didn't know that. So to them, they're like, wow, this is a nice, young, respectable lady. She just got into something. And they released me on my own recognizance under the supervision of probation until the case was over. I went through DV court. I went through another session of counseling with, I can't think of the guy's name, but he was a reverend in downtown Albany. He passed away, very influential to the community. And I used to sit with him. It was scary because he was a priest. He was white. He had that collar. And we had to meet at his church at night. I was like, if this man touched me, I'm going to tear this off. No, I'm serious. I said, I'm going to flip the desk. I'm going to kill him, and I'm going to run. Every time I seen him, I think his name was Reverend Miller. But he was the sweetest guy, and he never tried anything, I promise you. So all priests are not like that. But that was in the media at the time, so that's what I thought. And I was like, why would the court send me to this man in his church at night? In the middle of the hood. But that man wrote me a letter, and I still have it to this day. He wrote me a letter. Well, he wrote a letter to the judge about me. He gave me a copy. And what he said about me, even though that's not how he met me, I was like, so that whole case was closed. Done. I don't have a record. To this day, I do not have a criminal record at all. But in the charge was like a felony. It was like a felony charge. So yeah, God got me out of that. And so fast forward, like I mentioned, I was taking classes at Hudson Valley. I switched my major multiple times. I would go, but I was distracted by men. I wanted a boyfriend so bad that I could be at class at 9. I'm laying in my bed with a man I ain't got no business being with, and I wouldn't go to class. Why am I giving up my life, my success for you? And at that point in my life, I already knew you weren't going to stay around. Like, why? But that is the things that you do when you are caught up in these cycles and when these aces affect you and you don't even know it. So I changed my major, I would fail, and then they would kick me out, take my financial aid, and my grandma was like, you got to go to school. You're a black woman. You have to be educated. You have to be able to take care of yourself because no one else will, and no one is going to give you anything. I'm like, Grandma, I can't go to school. Don't you see these grades? And she would pay out of her pocket. And she did it multiple times. Out of her pocket for me to go back. And then because my grandma spent her money, I would do very well. Because I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? I'm very smart. I can do the work. It's just that I wasn't applying myself. I didn't care to apply myself. I wasn't even showing up. But because my grandma spent her money, oh, I'm going to class. And then it was like the cycle just kept happening. So eventually I said, Grandma, listen, I really appreciate you loving me. I really appreciate you spending your money, but I can't do school right now. I can't focus. I can't do it. And she was like, okay, I understand. So I stopped going to school. And then I had this other boyfriend with some other stuff. But with that particular boyfriend, I was invited to church for my grandparents, my father's parents' 50th anniversary. We had a dinner, and my grandmother stood up there at the dinner. It's like 25 people in this room having dinner. She's like, you know, I really appreciate all this, and thank you. We've been married for 50 years. But I really would like to see you all in church tomorrow. Ma'am, you know the money I just spent? We talking about church tomorrow. But something inside me was pricked. And so I went to church the next day. I heard a good word. And I was like, that was interesting. The preacher knows all my business. I told my friend. He knows all about me. I told my friend that I went to church. She was like, the church did burn down? I said, no. It's still standing. So she was like, well, when are you going to come with me? So I went with her. Long story short, I did get saved. I gave my life to God. So that's why when I said number one, and I was like, I can't do it. Because really, the number one reason was because God saved my life.
Amen.
Yes. But then like the counseling, the support from other people, that stuff all helped. You know, and so I did get saved. I gave my life to Christ. And then, because I had faith and I began to learn about my identity, I went back to school. Right. So today, I have an associate's degree in criminal justice. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I'm pursuing law school.
Thank you, Jesus.
I'm pursuing law school. I'm married to one man. Married to one wife. We both love Jesus. And I would never have imagined with all those idiots I dealt with, I would have never thought, now I'm going to cry, that someone, a human being, the opposite sex, could love me for me.
Amen.
And I mean, when my husband and I were very good friends. Like, I met him at the church I go to in Albany. And we were just really cool friends. And God gave him like this whatever that made him think I was going to be his wife. And I was like, you're my friend. I am not your wife. That's not my life. He's younger than me. I'm like, no. I'm not marrying you. I didn't even like him like that. I'm serious. I was like, but he was like, no, God told me. I was like, God did not tell you that. Devil is a lie. God didn't tell you that. I'm not marrying you. You know, because it was so hard for me to grasp the fact. I told him everything I just told you and more. I told him the ins, the outs, the details, good, bad, ugly. Because I'm thinking I would turn him away. Like, don't you know I did this? And he'd be like, yeah, but how long ago was that? Aren't you saved now? Did God make you new? I said, shut up. Yes, I am new, but that ain't got nothing to do with you, and I'm not marrying you. Like, I promise you, if my husband was here, he would tell you it is the honest truth. I did not like him. I did not want to marry him. And I don't know, even now, we've been married for going on 2.5 years. Praise God. And it's been a joy. So I am now a college-educated person. Let me speak like I am. I'm married. I am a coordinator at one of the ministries at my church. These are just the things that I'm sharing this with you, not to boast about myself, because I'm not that important, but to let you know this is what it looks like when you overcome. Right. This is what it looks like when you are.
Thank you, Jesus.
It's totally new. My friends that I have friends to this day that were my friends back then, and they're like, what happened? I keep telling you Jesus, I asked him. Amen. So I do that. I'm a coordinator of one of the ministries at my church. I am an outreach volunteer with Urban Grief. That's why I'm here. And I'm also, I had to think about myself writing this. I said, well, who are you? I said, I'm a friend. I'm a good friend. I'm a very good friend. I try my best to be there for everyone and understand where everyone is. It's not, I don't judge them. I don't care where you are, what you're doing. I don't judge you because I've been there, done that. I'm an intercessor, so as she was saying, something about a woman that can pray. That's me. It's me. You call me to pray. And then God gave me this as I was writing it. I'm the push and the pull. I will pull you up and push you into destiny.
Amen.
That's just the type of person I am because of all of these things, everything that I've seen. So when I see young kids come in my church and they're not dressed, you know, the clothes are hanging over, they're too small, and I'm just like, what is going on in that home?
Right.
Amen.
Right.
What is it? Something is going on. And so when you encounter people, or even if it's yourself, and something is off, don't point to everything in, you know, that book they have for all those disorders. Don't point to everything in that. You have to look back in their past and say, what happened? What has this child been exposed to? What have they seen? What have people spoken to them? Because when you tell a child something, they believe it. Right? And so when my mom used to verbally abuse me and call me names and say all that crazy stuff, and then my grandmother was saying all this other stuff, it was like a fight, a war. I'm like, well, which one am I?
Right.
Who am I? You know, so I literally have this on my paper. I shared all of that to say this. We've all been through some things, and most of us in this room, I already said that score, probably skip that, but most of us also probably have a decent resiliency score as well. What does that mean? We all can make it. So I believe that one thing that Julia wants for all of you is to move from trauma to resilience. Right?
Amen.
That's your bounce back. That's how you say, yeah, I went through that. My mom was this, my dad was that, and so was that, and this person did this to me. I didn't even mention that my mom's boyfriend, that boyfriend molested me. I told my god sister, she said, you have to tell your mom. Because her and her mom were my grandmother were very close. She said, you have to tell your mom. I said, she gonna curse me out. Because that's what she did. She was like, no, you have to tell. I told my mom, she didn't believe me. I was like, you know what? That's why I'm rock with you. Like, literally, that was my mind. I was like, that's why I'm mess with you. And so that man lived with us in that house or another apartment, because we moved every other year, for many years after that. And it was not until my mother and I had this big old argument, and I said to her,